Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Thursday, the 11th day of December, 2025. And in the headlines, Israel seems to be facing more attacks from both Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, so-called West Bank, as well as Hezbollah and Lebanon. And so we're going to look at those two stories. Another scary headline having to do with technology, as well as a new discovery about the past reveals the ancients employed sophisticated mathematical reasoning before writing was invented, confirming the biblical account that in the beginning humans were created perfect, they fell from perfection, as opposed to Darwinian evolution saying we are, moving forward and forward each day, evolving to something more wonderful. The ancients had knowledge that we still can't figure out how they got it because we know from the very beginning they were created perfect and they fell from that perfection. Anyway, we've got those stories. So it's interesting how we have these two stories now that show both the past and the future, how scripture is right on this. Here's the headlines. First of all, there's two of them from Israel HaYom. Judea and Samaria are heading toward their own October 7th. Not good. Judea and Samaria is the so-called West Bank. Then another report from Israel Hayom Hezbollah disarmament slipping away as Israel readies new strikes again after a year of peace up in north in Lebanon. Hezbollah, they're not disarming, so we're going to be fighting there. And so, as we're mentioning, end of this month, we got Netanyahu meeting Trump in Florida to decide what to do in Gaza, Lebanon, Iran. So it seems to be the lid's about to come off, it seems, in some of these things. Now, there's a story the New York Post did here, and it says ChatGPT accused of being complicit in murder for the first time in a bombshell suit that is scarier than the Terminator. This is a really freaky story. It is not surprising, though, given the exponential increase of technology, which is one of our signs of the end. And we'll talk about it. And then from the Jewish News Syndicate, Israeli study finds math and ancient Mesopotamian flower art. And this math was advanced mathematics there. This is supposedly before the invention of writing, but it's thousands of years ago. So showing the ancients were a bunch of Neanderthals walking around with their knuckles dragging on the ground. All right, so basically, Israel seems to be about to engage in two other military hotspots, the West Bank and Lebanon again. In addition, these other two headlines have amazing things to teach us about both the past and the future from Scripture. You really can't make this stuff up. We're still working on our series on timeless truths in the Bible. We'll hopefully to start having that soon. And again, once we're there, I know we keep talking about it. I think you really like it. The first four are going to be about the same subject. And I think if you watch it with us and think it through and follow it and follow the scripture and the stories, it's going to really be not only mind-boggling but life-changing. And in a nutshell, what it's going to be is the basically the confirmation that God uses natural everyday events supernaturally in your life and in my life to get you and to get me where he wants us to be. And we see the supernatural hand of God in everyday events as we'll see in three different stories in scripture and one story in the past. And it'll encourage us to look around, realize, hey, this wasn't a coincidence. This was a divine appointment. God is doing things or has done things that I thought were just coincidental at the time, didn't think about them. But now realizing this is the living God working. And so we'll talk about that. And like one of the things we're going to say at the end, I'm sure each of us, if we thought long and hard enough, we're going to see certain events that did happen in our lives that were turning points that where the Lord used to guide us on the path we're on right now. Anyway, we'll get to that soon. All right, let's get to the headlines. Israel Hayom, headline number one. Judea and Samaria are heading toward their own October 7th. 25 years ago, the rockets in Gaza began as improvised homemade weapons built in kitchens, garages, and small workshops. Recent rocket labs in Tulkarem, and that's in Judea, Samaria, reveal a growing terror infrastructure that mirrors Gaza's path. The recently discovered primitive rockets near Tulkarem, only a few kilometers from Highway 6 in central Israel, are not the first such devices the IDF and Shin Bet, that's the security agency, have intercepted in advance. Dozens of similar attempts have been uncovered in recent years, along with the security barrier facing Israel's central region. This is the central part of Israel, not the south, not the north, but in central Israel, where Judea and Samaria are. And basically, what they're seeing, it's the same process they saw in Gaza between 2000 and 2002 when terrorists first went to homemade rocket production. So they're seeing this happen now in the central part of the country. All right. And they talk about what happened. They said Gazans, what they did, they extracted explosives from landmines, mixed them with improvised substances, and used hollow metal pipes or anything else they could find. Much of this work took place in garages and workshops. In Gaza, the first batches of propellant were made at home from sugar and chemical fertilizer. Later, metal workers began adding stabilizing fins made of sheet steel. The same process is now taking place in Judea and Samaria, with one crucial difference. Unlike Gaza at the time, the IDF and the Shin Bet, that's the security services, are presently physically present on the ground, both operationally and in intelligence gathering. In other words, they're watching this as they're worried about another October 7th fiasco happening in the central part of the country. Judea and Samaria, at least as far as okay, he says, and then what happened in Gaza, after what happened in Gaza, there's a clear understanding, at least regarding Judea and Samaria, that no one will do this work for Israel. Now, this is what's really important here. Not the U.S., not international forces, not an Arab multinational force, and not the Palestinian Authority. You can kill it when it's small, only if you are there. This is the gist of the story. They are there. They're looking in Judea and Samaria to try and stop it. That is what the IDF and the security services try and do, often succeeding in the face of efforts by Hamas and by Iran to turn the improvised rockets into a meaningful threat, just like Gaza did on October 7th. And so the article goes on to say Judea and Samaria, as far as known, at least is being handled, but they're as these groups are trying to forge another group of weapons where they'd be able to attack in central Israel like they did in southern Israel. And but the article again says, and this is fascinating here, the problem is still once again Gaza. Israel's decision to allow a foreign force into the strip, a force that will de facto bear responsibility for counterterrorism, or part of that responsibility, shows they have not fully recovered from the mindset that prevailed October 6, 20, until October 6, 2023. While Gaza was burned by a boiling reality, in Judea and Samaria the approach is cautious and cold. Yet in post-war Gaza, Israel appears to be repeating the same mistake. Rockets are once again being made there, only now with far greater experience. The Gazans who once used these weapons will not hesitate to do so again the moment the opportunity serves them. In other words, if Israel leaves all of Gaza and they leave it to some international stabilization force, the problem is this group is not going to be looking to these homemade workshops and places where the bomb making is and the rockets being made. That not like Israel would do. So if you turn it over to them, therein lies the problem. Okay, so as we've continually mentioned, here's a takeaway: the battle against Israel will never end. The Gazans will once again, like they said, rockets are being made. They won't hesitate to use the weapons. Uh, Both in Judea, Samaria, and in Gaza, weapons continue to be fashioned with express purpose of attacking Israel. As the article warns, if the IDF leaves Gaza for this ISF, International Stabilization Force, there's no one there to keep another October 7th from happening. So Israel's continual search for peace is ongoing, but never achieving its results. And that's sign 7 of our 25 signs are near the end. They keep searching, but when they put out one fire, another fire comes up here and there. It's never ending. That's the whole point. That's sign 7 from our book. Be a continual search for peace in Israel. It's a free download, of course, the book from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. 25 signs are near the end. So the bottom line in this first story, they're working in Judea and Samaria to try and do a similar thing with what they did in Gaza, October 7th in 2023. But at least Israel is there with the ear to the ground trying to stop that. But the worrisome thing is they completely get out of Gaza, then this international stabilization force won't be able to do the work to find these workshops, to find these hidden areas where the Gazans will again make these weapons and do it all over again. Why? Because the same goal is there, the destruction of the state of Israel, and it's never ending. And that's why Israel has to do what it has to do with the respect to their own security there. But this is the mess that they're in. Now, along the same line, another story from Israel HaYom, Hezbollah disarmament slipping away as Israel's readies new strikes. All right. Sources close to the terror group say Egyptian-backed initiative has collapsed. U.S. officials warned of major Israeli strikes targeting precision missiles and drones. In other words, here we go again in their northern border after a year of peace. The pro-Hezbollah newspaper Al Akbar reported this morning that Lebanese President Joseph Aoun's decision to elevate the representation level in the Oversight Committee is apparently not eliminate the possibility that Israel return to a new offensive. Sources in Lebanon have written off, there's an Egyptian initiative out there. They've written off this initiative, which was based on the complete disarmament of Hezbollah in the area south of the Litani River and a commitment not to use weapons in areas north of it. Now, if you recall, the Litani River is 18 miles from Israel's northern border. And the whole idea is that 18-mile stretch should have no Hezbollah forces at all, no weapons, no anything. And of course, it was until a year ago. That's where they were fighting from, and Hezbollah was entrenched there. They had sophisticated tunnels there. Even though they had an agreement in 2006 that the UN and others would keep this from happening, the Lebanese army, nothing ever happened. And so it seems they're still up to it. So the problem is Israel sees this and they're not gonna take it anymore. So in other words, basically, the Lebanese agency report just blew up residential buildings on the outskirts of a village in southern Lebanon. And according to this, European diplomats, officials in Beirut were reported to have quoted American envoy Morgan Orgatis as saying Israel intends to carry out, here we go, large and harsh strikes against Hezbollah, particularly in the eastern Bekaa region. The terror organization does not, if they don't hand over their precision missiles and drones at the beginning, excuse me, of the new civil year. So against this backdrop, all parties report to be waiting for here's the key, all parties are waiting for the end of the current month, the final deadline of Lebanese army's plan to collect Hezbollah's weapons in the area south of the Litani River and moving north. Hezbollah has emphasized that the ceasefire agreement applies only to the area south of the river, while Israel and the U.S. are waiting for steps by the Lebanese army. So at the end of this month, like we said, Netanyahu will meet Trump in Florida, talk about Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, etc. It seems that the Lebanon issue cannot avoid further fighting, as it seems also true in Gaza, since Hamas won't disarm. So hopefully, here's the key, Israel won't be involved in any more compromise or forced to compromise and not rid Hezbollah of their weapons, not ridding them to disarm. The same thing true about Hezbollah, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon. So at the end of this month, we should know one way or another where things are going, and we'll see what takes place. But Israel is again threat from all sides. Now, that's the latest with Israel, the Middle East. The next story, this one is really scary, gang. This one is from the New York Post. Saw it today. Not surprising, though. ChatGPT accused of being complicit in murder for the first time in a bombshell suit. Scarier than the Terminator. This is according to the New York Post. All right, what's going on here? ChatGPT is accused of being complicit in a murder for the first time, allegedly causing the death of a Connecticut mother who was killed by her son. Why or how? After the AI chatbot fed his paranoid delusions, according to an explosive lawsuit filed today, Thursday. The lawyer behind the case calls this scenario scarier than the Terminator, and even the chatbot itself admitted to the Post that it appears to bear some responsibility. The suit filed by Suzanne Eberson Adams' estate in California accuses ChatGPT creator OpenAI and founder Sam Altman of the wrongful death in the October 3rd murder-suicide that left Adams and her son Stein Eric Solberg dead inside their tiny Greenwich home. ChatGPT master stripped away or skipped safeguards to quickly release a product. Now, here's what's going on, what took place, that encouraged Solberg's psychosis and convinced him that his mom was part of a plot to kill him, the lawsuit claims. This isn't Terminator. No robot grabbed a gun. It's way scarier. It's total recall, Adams' estate attorney Jay Ellison told the New York Post. ChatGPT built Stein Eric Solberg his own private hallucination, a custom-made hell where a beeping printer or a Coke can could mean that his 83-year-old mother was plotting to kill him. Unlike the movie, there was no wake-up button. Suzanne Adams paid with her life, the family added. AI companies have previously been accused of helping people kill themselves, but the Adams lawsuit is the first known time that an AI platform has been accused in the involvement in the murder, Adelson said. So we'll keep an eye on that. And bottom line is ChatGPT not helped this character. He's obviously psychotic, in his quest to do away with his mother. And so this is the first time we've seen this happen. Now, there's people that have committed suicide based on what these bots had said. This is the first time they seem to be complicit in a murder, and it was a murder-suicide. The young man killed himself, too, after killing his mother. So we'll see where that goes. Now, why is this important? Well, here we go. We know from Scripture that modern technology is going to be used at the time of the end for the final Antichrist to have worldwide control over institutions and people. We've documented this in Sign 15 of our 25 signs are near the end. There'll be an exponential increase in technology. Accordingly, stories like the above should not surprise us, seeing that the technology will be used to do what? To brainwash, threaten, and control the populace to do his bidding. So see our book also, The Final Antichrist, The Coming Caesar, which can also be found on our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. So sign 15 and 25 signs were near the end, and the entire book dedicated to final Antichrist, who he is, the coming Caesar, should, open your eyes if you haven't seen this story yet or seen what's going to take place about how this coming world leader is going to use modern technology too. We've talked about this in scripture, to control the people, to frighten them, but also to get what he wants. And so amazingly, we're going to be seeing this more and more. All right. Final headline illustrates how the Bible was also correct about the past, correct about the future, and now also about the past. Israeli study finds math and ancient Mesopotamian flower art. From the Jewish News Syndicate. Hebrew University researchers uncovered 8,000-year-old pottery showing floral patterns built on precise geometric progressions. We kid you not. And this is not the first time things like this have been found, by the way. Research at Israel's Hebrew University identified the world's earliest systematic botanical art dating back more than 8,000 years that demonstrates sophisticated mathematical reasoning. Professor Yosef Garfinkel and Sarah Krulwich analyzed pottery from the Halafon culture of northern Mesopotamia, somewhere about 5,500 BC, it said, we're told that where that was from, across 29 archaeological sites. Their study, published in the Journal of World Prehistory, found the flowers, shrubs, and trees painted on the vessels display, get this, precise numerical patterns, particularly petal counts following the geometric progression of 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64. The researchers argue these sequences weren't decorative accidents, but reflected intentional mathematical thinking about dividing space and quantities, likely tied to practical needs such as sharing harvests from communal fields. These patterns show that mathematical thinking began long before writing, said Kurowich. People visualized division, sequences, and balance through their art. Now, here's the interesting part for us. The discovery challenges previous assumptions about mathematical reasoning when it emerged, providing evidence that it predated written number systems by millennia. The pottery marks the first time in human history that the plant world became a systematic subject of artistic expression. None of the images depict edible crops, suggesting the purpose was aesthetic rather than agricultural or ritualistic, according to the researchers. All right. This story is about ancient understanding of sophisticated mathematical thinking. Like we said, it's not the first time stories like this have been discovered. It's amazing. We had one a couple years ago in Babylonia where there was an early form of trigonometry that was used by the Babylonians during like the time of Daniel, 500 years before the appearance of Christ. And so basically, the bottom line is the ancients were scientifically advanced. This is precisely what we'd expect to see, given the Bible tells us that humanity was originally created perfect, but fell from that perfection. In other words, contrary to atheistic evolution, humanity is not evolving to a more sophisticated being. The accumulation of knowledge has helped the human race advance in many areas, but let's face it, human nature isn't one of them. We have looked at this subject in detail from our series, The Bible and Science, Are They in Conflict? They're free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible and Science. We have a whole section on these books and explains what Scripture says happened at the beginning from the only eyewitness that was there at the beginning, That is God himself. We get his take on what happened at the beginning, and that's the only thing that really counts. So all in all, what we see in these last two headlines is amazing. They provide further confirmation about what has happened in the past, as well as what will take place in the future according to the Bible, and it shows again to be our trustworthy guide. So the ancients weren't Neanderthals with their knuckles dragging on the ground. And in the future, there'll be sophisticated things taking place according to the scripture as it predicts, and like we talk about inside 53 places where modern technology has to be put into play, which the final Antichrist will use to control and threaten the entire world. You really can't make this stuff up. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.